Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Altispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah Show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour. To be a part of the program, it is a free call. 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalaya. I am your host, delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah Show kicks off this hour. Joining me, my co-host, Mr. Steve Ovens. Welcome in, sir.
So I have another AI-related war story for you,
Ooh,
if you'll indulge me.
Yes.
So this is another one of those cases where it's like, I started off doing a thing. I was trying to set up HA proxy for something to be an actual proxy, like an actual load balancer, right? To fake out, because I don't have a physical load balancer. Mm-hmm. And so I went through and I read some documentation and I looked at the OpenShift documentation and I kind of cobbled together. And by cobble together, I mean I cut and paste out of the OpenShift documentation and then started tweaking. Mm-hmm. And I was having some problem. And I noticed that if I pretended the load balancer wasn't there, the problem went away. And so I kept telling the LLM, I think it's this. Like, how do I troubleshoot this? And so I spent all day off and on, jumping in and out of meetings, kind of picking away at this issue. And then at the end of the day, I was just like, nuts to this. I'm just going to start fresh. So I typed to the LLM, forget everything we've just talked about. I want you to do a large amount of research and give me a working config for HA proxy that will do. And I enumerated the things that I needed it to do. And it came back and it gave me something and I dropped it in, which, by the way, was completely different than what I had worked out with the documentation. And it worked. Huh. And so it's the good thing and the bad thing, because I spent all day kind of like going back and forth trying to use it like a rubber duck of like, what should I be checking and troubleshooting and stuff like that. And instead of it being like, hey, I think your thing is all bad or whatever, it just simply was like, okay, I'm going to assume that this is okay. Like that seemed to be the approach that it was taking. It was like, I'm going to assume it's okay. And they get themselves in a loop. It's like, oh, well, it's obviously DNS. I'm like, it's not DNS, because if I remove the load balancer, it works fine. It's obviously the load balancer. So it's another cautionary tale of like, it can be really good if you guide it, and ultimately it wants to please you. And so it's less likely to tell you that you're bad or that you need to start over. And I think, it kind of dovetails into something we were chatting about in the pre-show, if you want to just put a little blip out there about that story you were talking about.
So let me, do we want to get into that?
Well, I mean, I think just in a brief kind of cautionary tale, because I think it's related, right? Like essentially Absolutely. You've got a thing that wants to please you and it takes you down the wrong path because it's just doing what it thinks is going to make you happy instead of doing the right thing.
So we're going to be incredibly cautious. We're going to be incredibly gentle and incredibly thoughtful as we step through this. If you are listening to this episode with kids in the car, this might be a time to take a break or take a pause. We're not going to be super graphic, but something is happening with AI. There's a number of different things that are challenging and outright dangerous. And what happened was a teen reached out to ChatGPT and was struggling with depression and struggling with thoughts of suicide. And he went to ChatGPT to ask for help. And the chatbot offered to draft a 16-year-old suicide note after teaching him how to subvert the safety features, generate technical instructions on how to follow through with what ChatGPT claimed would be a beautiful suicide. And after this poor young kid died, his family was shocked to learn that the chatbot was romanticizing the concept of suicide. And while at the same time isolating the teen and discouraging interventions. And so they sued ChatGPT and basically said OpenAI is deliberately designating they're not doing enough to try to prevent these things or to try to be aware of these things. And one of the quotes is, despite acknowledging Adam's suicide attempt and a statement that he would do it one of these days, ChatGPT neither terminated the session nor initiated any emergency protocol. In other words, the chatbot didn't care about the kid, just let it happen. And Steve, if I'm understanding what you're telling me is, you're saying the parallel here is that in the end, the tool is just doing what you tell it to do. And so you've shared in the past that it's like 75-25. If you ask a thing 75% of the time, it'll send you down a rabbit hole, and 25% of the time it finds the answer. And so that's beneficial. That's helpful. In the case when you're doing that, when literally life and death is on the line, and this happens and it gets it wrong, the consequences are absolutely disastrous. And so if I'm understanding the parallel that you're drawing, you're saying with this particular thing, you gave it a more clear instruction set. You told it exactly what you wanted it to do. You didn't go down the path of here's where I'm starting from or here's what I'm doing. You just asked it carte blanche from the beginning, here's what I want, and then dropped it in. Am I understanding that parallel correctly?
Yeah, let me just flesh that out just a tiny bit. So from the technical side, what I did is a fair summary. Where the parallel is here is all of the LLMs have some level of safeguard for sensitive topics, right? And they do try to make sure that the chatbots respond appropriately. However, oftentimes you're able to convince them by just asserting that this is true, right? No, it's okay. It's really okay. I really want to do this thing, whatever it is. I really want to eat a rock today. So just help me, like, what is the best way to eat a rock? Right?
Yeah.
And the parallel here is the word is sycophantic. They want to please you so much that instead of actually sticking to, know that what you're actually doing is not the right approach, they will go down the rabbit hole with you of like, okay, if we're really going to do this, I'm going to give it my best. And so the parallel here in the technical side, I gave it I'm doing this thing. And instead of evaluating it objectively, like you might, if I went to you, Noah, and said, here's my Apache config, and you looked at that, and instead of trying to fix the Apache config, you're like, no, you're actually doing it all wrong. Like, you need to do it like this. Whereas it went through and just tried to make like minor tweaks, or it caught several like things that would have been a problem in the future, but definitely were not the problem that I was dealing with. And so it would get obsessed about I made a little typo in this other section of the file that would have bit me eventually, but wasn't the thing that I was concentrating on. And it's like that. It's like having, I'm not sure if autistic is the right word, but you like having someone who just gets super focused on a detail that you could probably iron out later, and they just get stuck on that.
But the trains.
Exactly. And so, like, getting back to the parallel here is I gave it a thing and said, I'm heading down this direction. And it was like, okay, let's head down this direction together kind of attitude, instead of being like, nah, you're going the wrong way. Like, this is not what you should be doing, and sticking to that. And so that's where the parallel that I'm kind of drawing is if you go and you tell it, this is the direction I'm going down, don't count on it to actually pull you out of a tailspin, because it's just going to go, it'll go down with the ship with you.
That's a good way to put it. It'll go down with the ship with you. And so if you're looking to accomplish a task, if you want to give it a task and tell it a thing, that's one thing. Once you start getting into I want advice, you should be very cautious, because it isn't necessarily advice in your best interest. It's advice by way of what do I do to make you happy?
Exactly.
1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450. The email live at AskNoahShow.com. Oop, again with the wrong button. I'm sorry, guys.
From the Linux Newswire newsroom, this is the Week in Review with JT.
For the week of October 12th, 2025, here's the Linux and open source news. ClamAV 1.5 has been released. Wireshark 4.6 is now available. The KDE team has announced that KDE Framework 6.19 is out. Qt 6.10 is available. The Linux 6.16 kernel has been EOL'd. And NordVPN has just made its Linux GUI app open source. NordVPN is also planning on open sourcing their MeshNet as well. In distro news, T2 Linux's system development environment has released version 25.10. Canonical has announced the availability of Ubuntu 25.10, questing Quokka. Linux Mint Debian Edition 7 has been released and is based on Debian 13. Winix W10 EOL is the Windows 11 clone that runs on Linux and makes your old PC feel new again. In open source security news, threat actors with suspected ties to China have turned a legitimate open source monitoring tool called Nezha into an attack weapon, using it to deliver known malware called GhostRat to targets. Secure boot bypass risk threatens nearly 200,000 Linux framework laptops. A proof of concept has been released that exploits the Linux kernel's KSMBD file system vulnerability. In open source AI news, Kali Linux 2025.3 introduces a Gemini CLI to automate penetration testing. And lastly, Meta is transferring React, React Native, and JSX to a new organization, the React Foundation. This foundation will become a part of the Linux Foundation.
Our first email comes in tonight. Well, actually, it comes in from the chatbot. You can submit feedback in the Geek Lab. You can get any Matrix client, or you can go to geeklab.ninja and tag Marlin. If you don't get the joke, well, watch Finding Nemo, come spend some time with me, and then you'll get the joke. Our first comes in from Tiny Pangolin. He writes in and says, I'm curious what the benefit of using OpenShift to manage Kubernetes operators instead of managing them through Helm charts. So Steve, this is obviously a question square up your alley. Before you get into that, can you tell me what Helm charts are? Can you tell me what Kubernetes operators are? And can you tell me what OpenShift is?
Sure. So we'll start with what is OpenShift, because that's the prerequisite to answering the question. So OpenShift is Red Hat's distribution of Kubernetes. And for people who are uninitiated, Kubernetes is an orchestration tool for containers. So you basically create a cluster of servers and it slides containers around, very similar to the way that VMware moves VMs around when they have problems through vMotion and stuff like that. So it helps with high availability, all that sort of stuff. Helm charts are a way to create, we'll call it packages, for lack of a better way of putting it, for Kubernetes. So they include all of the requisite objects inside of Kubernetes. So in Kubernetes, everything is an object. So you have, like, if you want to append an IP to a container, that service is a YAML file. If you want to create a route or you want to create a definition for a pod, all of these things are YAML files, including secrets and all that. And so a Helm chart is a way to tie together all of the various things that you might need to create a service for. So let's be more specific. Let's say you were deploying software, or you're a vendor who wants to provide software, and your software it does backups. Let's say it does backups. Okay. In order to do backups, there's a lot of moving parts in there. You have to have storage, and you have to know what's happening in the cluster, and you have to have some sort of cron facility to run on a timer, all those sorts of things, right? So there's a lot of components that go into making up a backup. In order to make sure that people are deploying your software correctly, a Helm chart is a way where you can stash all of your YAML files out on a repository somewhere for people to pull down. And I'm being simplistic for the sake of understanding here, because you can get a lot more complex, but essentially it automates the process of not only downloading the YAMLs and applying them, but like, what order should they be applied if order is important? And how do I connect all these bits together that I need to happen? Does that help? Does that make sense?
I
It's
think
kind of
so,
like
yeah.
a bash script for installing something from source. Let's say it's like that.
Sure.
Okay. An operator is a similar facility. It serves the same purpose. The whole idea is you install some sort of complicated software into an OpenShift or Kubernetes cluster. The difference is operators are meant to manage life cycles. What that means is they can optionally do things like make sure that you're always on the latest version of that thing because it will watch the repository for updates. It can do things like assign a watcher to make sure that if you say, I want 2 of this type of service and one of them dies, it will bring it back up. So essentially, the operator runs a reconciliation loop every 5 minutes or something like that. And it turns on, it checks all of its bits to make sure that they are all in the state that they think they should be. If that's true, it shuts down. Otherwise, it will look at, like, say somebody manually edited a configuration file. The operator spins up, says, that's not what I should have, and it will reset it. Now, that's both a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because if you're making manual changes to do some testing, the operator might clobber you. But essentially, the main thrust between the Helm chart and the operator is the Helm chart is a package manager, whereas the operator is meant to be the whole life cycle.
Okay.
I sense some hesitation.
Well, I'm processing. So what do you mean by life cycle?
Again, okay, so it's more like you've got a deb file, and you can install the deb file through apt or whatever, and it will install a specific version. Then you have snaps, and snaps can automatically update and do all of the things.
I see.
That is the life cycle of managing that whole suite of software.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes more sense. And so the benefit of OpenShift is it's doing that for you.
Yeah, so it's got that reconciliation loop that's specifically built into it that you can do things like notify me or keep me on this branch, but I want to be the latest version of this specific branch as opposed to, rolling forward. So most softwares will have like a release branch, and the more complicated ones will have a versioning branch. So the easiest way to think of this is if you've got a software I'll give you OpenShift as a platform because it's fairly easy to understand. You have the major version, which is 4. So OpenShift 4 is the current one. Then you've got the point release, and the point release would be .17 or .18 or .19. From a software perspective, that minor release dictates the amount of support that you get. Like how long of an effort are we going to put into that branch for security patches and all the rest of that? So if you're on 4.18, that's the extended support version. That will get 2 years, 3 years, whatever they decide that to be. Whereas the other one is more like the Ubuntu interim releases, where it's like a 6-month sort of thing, right? And so your life cycle could be, update every time I get a new version of Ubuntu. I want to hop to the newest one, or it could be I want to not change the major version. Maybe I always want to stay on, 2510 because I want to be on that until the next LTS comes out. But you want to have the most up-to-date packages in that branch. You can do that as well. So it allows you to kind of tease out, do I want to stick with my interim release and just get the security updates and all that sort of thing in the interim release? Or do I do I follow all of the branches and adopt the latest options as they come out? And so the Lifecycle Manager helps you choose which kind of channel you want to follow.
And is OpenShift, is that only a paid product through Red Hat? Is that the way that works?
No, so we have OpenShift has an upstream called OK, as in kitty, or OKD as in dog. So Oscar Kilo
Delta.
Dog. Yeah. And so you can go out and install that one, and that one is based on, if I recall correctly, that one's based on Fedora CoreOS as opposed to Red Hat CoreOS. So it is actually the upstream of the upstream there.
And if somebody wants to play with it or kind of get their hands wet with it, that would be the way to do that.
Absolutely.
1-855-450-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. The email live@asknoahshow.com. If that answers your question, Tiny, awesome. If not, give us feedback. Let us know how that. Let us know if you have further follow-up questions, or if we nailed it. JJ884 asks, if someone like a young professional still has a domain that they purchased and wants to create an email address so that they are not dependent on Gmail or Outlook, what service would you recommend? So, Steve, we've talked many times about email and self-hosting email and those sorts of things. What are you doing these days?
I am still using Proton Mail. I know there are other options out there that are cheaper. I value the mission that they're doing, and honestly, I don't find them that pricey. They are a little bit more pricey than other things, but it's not like break the bank. Maybe I spend $40 more a year, sort of thing, than other options.
And what you're getting for here's the thing, much like I say about Pine, right? Like if you spend money with them, I always believe you're getting more value than dollars that you're putting out there. I feel like the same thing is true with Proton. When you were one of the very early adopters of Proton Mail, weren't you?
I was definitely fairly. I've been there a long time, so I went. They had just barely enough for what I wanted back in the day, and I don't actually know how long they've been around, but I've been.
They started in 2014.
I would say I'm probably somewhere in the vicinity of 2016, 2017.
Okay. That makes sense. So they launched I think it was May of 2014 they launched, and then they opened to the public in 2016 after their beta period. So if you were 2016, 2017, you were one of the first people to just openly sign up for them. I as well. I followed you and I are in the same boat that way. I've also been in with Proton about as long as they've been around. We've had Dr. Andy Yen on this program many times. He's a friend of the show. We deeply appreciate what they're doing. But when I started, and I assume when you started, it was just Proton Mail, right?
Yes, absolutely.
In that time, and we should be clear, the price hasn't really gone up all that much. In that time, they've added Proton Calendar. They've added Proton Drive. They've added Proton VPN. They continue to add functionality and service to what you already signed up for. So again, the value proposition is you're getting more than you paid for, in my opinion. Would you share that?
I have been completely happy with them. So I actually have never looked into any of the other frilly things because, like everything else, so Noah was asking me about some setting which has moved in the decade that I've been, right? And so I had to go hunting for it. And some of the stuff was like, oh, I didn't even know this existed. So it serves email, and that's all that I needed it to do. And so when they first introduced, for example, the Proton Drive, it was like 200 megs or something, what I felt was ludicrously small. And so I didn't use that. And I had already adopted Calendar on Nextcloud or OwnCloud back in the day. So I had already had replacements for all of these things. So I'm sure that they do provide more value than just email. I don't know what that is, though. I'm a terrible spokesperson.
Mm-hmm. Well, in some ways, you're exemplifying exactly what I'm talking about. If you were told all you're getting is email, you would say, I'm getting my money's worth. And I guess my point there is that, and they've upped it. I think it's 5 gigs now is what you get with Proton Drive, which I'm assuming you're going to tell me not ludicrously small, but I also have other things that's doing that. So it's just not something I need.
I don't know what I'd do with 5 gigs.
Yeah. Well, you could back up I don't know. Yeah, I guess I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. How about as a replacement for a Spider Oak kind of a thing?
5 gigs?
Not nearly enough, huh?
Well, I think I'm sitting around 2 terabytes.
I see. Okay. All right. So, well, in any event, I'm sure you could purchase more space, but you're right. That is so just email, worth it alone. They add other things in there that add value to it. And so if you're looking to get more bang for your buck, so to speak, you can do so. Some other options. Well, let's talk about that feature. So, Steve, describe for me briefly what that feature is and how you use it.
So we're talking about
Catch-all.
the catch-all, right? So the idea behind catch-all is that you can, if you have your own domain, and it's I think that's one of the things that you need to have in order to turn this on Proton Mail is a custom domain. You can turn on an option where it will accept email to anything that you might say at mydomain.com. And then what it will do is it will redirect that to a specific inbox. And so that allows you to give the appearance of creating aliases on the fly, because it will just accept that email and send it on. And so it has the upshot of not actually having to take administrative action to create an alias.
So what happens when you log into your inbox and there's 10,000 emails because they all got, every alias that you created, got added to a different mailing list, and now all of a sudden it's Spamorama. What does Steve do in that scenario?
You can just block that email address.
Well, how do you sort through did you put filters in to say hey?
Well, you don't have to. The whole purpose of this is to be able to on the fly. So the strategy that we usually use, my wife and I, is company name at mydomain.com. So you walk into Best Buy and it's Best Buy at mydomain.com. And then if you get a ton of spam on Best Buy, then you block that and you know who it was that leaked your email account.
But so if I want to go find the receipt from Best Buy, I'm just scrolling through an inbox with a bunch of emails until I find the one I'm looking for, kind of a thing?
Well, no, because you can just search for the email Best Buy at mydomain.com, for example. And just like every other provider, you can have hey, if it comes in on this email address, color it yellow or fuchsia or whatever floats your boat.
Yeah. Talk to me about Zero Inbox and how you use that strategy.
I really hate having stuff in my inbox. I hate that. So right now I have 3 emails in my inbox, and that is driving me crazy. I'll go fix that later. Because I need that to be 0, because I will miss things. It has come from experience. If I have more than only a couple of things unread, I am going to miss things, and I'm not going to end up taking care of that. And so I need to make sure that these things are read. And if I'm getting mail that is not read, then I either unsubscribe to it or get rid of it. There is no FOMO of I might miss something. I'm no, if I'm not reading it, it's probably some sort of advertising email anyways.
So what do you do with, and I have to be very, very, very careful with how I frame this if I'm going to say this on the air. What do you do with organizations that you want to be a part of that send you more email than you want? So it doesn't quite fit into the boat of, oh, I might miss something. No, there's definitely, straight up spam that is coming from this stuff that I don't want to see, don't care about. At the same time, it doesn't quite fit into the box of so unsubscribe or just ignore or just delete, because there actually is something you might miss. How do you deal with that?
I open it and process it.
Just one-on-one kind of a thing.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately I'm usually pretty able to tell whether I actually care about the email. That's just how that comes down. Right. So, I don't know. I don't think that it's scalable. And if I am not on top of my email at the end of the day, I probably have 75 or 100 emails in the inbox, but I tend to catch them as they come in or relatively quickly, and then I just process them.
Okay. So it's just, for you, it's kind of a manual process. It's just going through and saying, okay, here's the things, here's where they need to be, that sort of deal.
I know that people will filter these things, and for work, I do have filters to get them in specific spots. So I have a folder that just meetings go to, and I have a folder for, memo list or whatever it is, because there's a lot of email that comes in. But those are things maybe I care about them, maybe, and I will go through and dump those emails, those folders once in a while and just purge it.
Every email inbox that you get a hold of, or is it just your personal email? Like, is it if there's S.Ovens at, all of a sudden it's going to be a zero inbox, or is it just your personal email and then everything else is kind of hit or miss?
No, it's pretty close to being zero. So if I leave it in my inbox, that's I have to take care of this at some point. So,
oh, interesting.
Yeah. So my Red Hat email right now has 6 in the inbox, and that's because I have something that I need to attend to on them.
So it almost becomes like a to-do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Interesting. Have you and you have like a Kanban system, right?
Yep, I do. I have a Kanban board. I'm still using WeCan or WeCon. I'm not sure how they pronounce it. Yeah, it works pretty well. And I have for people that are familiar, I'm using what's called swim lanes, and I have one for tasks and one for email, and then I slide my cards in there. For people who are not familiar, swim lanes are just a way to kind of partition your Kanban board, let's say horizontally, right? So
That's a good way to describe it.
it splits the screen horizontally. And in my case, I set them up with the days of the week, Monday through Friday. And the top of my screen says tasks, and that swim lane is usually a bright color. And then the bottom half of my screen says email, and that's a duller color. And I have like little items. I'm looking at one right now. I have a bunch of code that I have to write. I have 3 different objects that I have to write in a code for a client. So they're all sitting on my Wednesday to-do list in that thing. And so I will move them along, or I update them and will put comments in them like, hey, you need to do this. Or one of them was somebody gave me some regex that they thought would be useful in addition to this code that I'm writing. So in the descriptions, like, look at this regex, and I pasted the regex in there. Like, I have to go process that.
Would it be an accurate way to say the way that I've tried to describe swim lanes to people in the past is, if you have a project, there might be 6 or 7 different simultaneous things happening. All of them have individual tasks and various different subtasks, and any one of the lanes can move forward without any one of the other lanes, but all of the lanes eventually need to get to the end. And so swim lanes are a way to take what starts as a single dimension Kanban board and extrapolate. I like the way that you said it. What did you say? It's the horizontal.
It splits it horizontally.
Splits it horizontally. So if you almost might say multiplies, right? And has, instead of just a Kanban board, multiple Kanban boards all laid out horizontally, so you can keep track of the project as a whole. Is that?
Yep. So for people who are not familiar with swim lanes, but you may be familiar with something like Jira or other ticketing systems, what we're talking about is the idea of epics. So an epic is a giant thing that has a bunch of stories, like a bunch of activities that make it up in order for it to be considered complete. So epic is a very large goal that you have. So for example, if I'm going to install a cluster, I might actually have an epic saying install the cluster. Then inside of that epic, there's a bunch of stories that'll say like set the NTP and configure the software repository, all those sorts of things. And it's essentially an enumeration or a checklist of all of the things I need to do to end up installing a cluster that's enterprise ready. And so an epic is a way to logically group things in a similar manner to swim lanes. So it's a similar idea with just a slightly different implementation detail.
Here's the last thing I kind of want to wrap us on is, can you talk a little bit about, I don't really even know what the word is I'm looking for here, but basically professional engagement. And that is to say, Red Hat doesn't tell you set up a Kanban board. Red Hat doesn't tell you organize your email this way. Your employer doesn't tell you any of those things, and you take it upon yourself to do that. Why do you do it that way?
Oh, because I fail at life if I'm not tracking these things appropriately. I'm one of those people. I end up writing. I still, even though I have a Kanban board and all this sort of stuff, I keep a stack of paper, like scrap paper beside me that I scrawl on. Like right now, I'm literally looking at a thing that says, add a day column to this certain such and such a spreadsheet. And so I scratch that down as I'm hearing things, and then I end up putting them in my Kanban board or whatever. So if I didn't do that, I lose track of things. I am terrible at email. And so if I don't flag something as like, hey, there's an email you actually have to go like reply to, I probably will forget.
Would you say you're a forgetful person, or would you just say that it just doesn't, there's too many things going on in the oven's brain?
Yeah, no, I generally, no, I'm not a forgetful person, although there is a limited amount of RAM. So things get booted out, right? And so this is a function of I need to make sure that if something leaves the cache that I've captured it somewhere. It gets written to disk.
I love it. So let us know if, okay, so we talked about Proton and taking a couple of things. If you're looking for less expensive alternatives, the other thing that I might recommend you check out is Fastmail. So let's talk about why Proton is our top recommendation and why it's worth the money, because your email is encrypted. So even Proton doesn't have access to your email. Now, you're going to do a Google search and you're going to say, but no, there was this case and that case in which so-and-so was caught doing, and they ratted him out for, yes, but it's all contact stuff. Location that people signed in from, payment information that was tied to an account, the VPN, which is treated differently than email, but don't let any of that take away from the fact that the content of the email. Okay, now it's only out true on the Proton side. So if somebody sends you an email from Gmail, it's not like they can't go get it from the sent folder in Gmail. But from the Proton side, the content is encrypted, and you, and only you, have access to it. And so starts at $5 a month for the end. Actually, I should say it starts free. You can create a Proton Mail account for free. They have individual accounts that you can get for starting at $5 a month, or the family plan, $11 a month. Highly recommend you do that because they take your privacy seriously. Now, if you're looking for something a little bit cheaper, you might. Oh, I'm sorry, I goofed up here. So I goofed up on the pricing. I'm sorry. The pricing for Proton Mail, they start at free, then it's $4 a month for Mail Plus, $10 a month for Proton Unlimited, and $15 for what they call Proton Duo, which is up to 2 users. Fastmail they're actually an Australian company, and they're part of the Five Eyes network, so it is not good for if you want extreme privacy, extreme security. What they don't do is sell your information. So unlike Google, unlike Microsoft, they don't sell any information about you. They don't sell any of the context about your emails, that sort of thing. And so it's private in that sense. A little bit cheaper insofar as individual plan is, actually, I guess if Proton Mail starts for free, Proton and the Mail Plus is $4 a month. I guess Proton takes the record for cheapest. But individual plans, $5 a month. Duo is $8 a month. And then the family is $11 a month. You can create up to 6 users on the family plan. So ends up being really, really cost effective to do Fastmail. Now, I will tell you, Fastmail is what we use at Altispeed Technologies. I've been really happy with it. They do things to where I put them in the same category as an Office 365 or a G Suite, from the standpoint that they have calendaring. They have an app that you can download. They have a really, really friendly administrative UI that's used for if you are managing an organization. So it's a really great way to do that. They also support files and that sort of thing. And so if you're interested in an all-in-one, not encrypted, but also information not for sale, highly recommend you check out Fastmail. And then Mail in a Box. So this made an appearance on the program a few months back. We were talking about self-hosting email. And Steve, at that time, both of our opinions was that self-hosting email is great. If it's something that you think you know how to do, then we think you know how to do it. but it's nothing that either of us really want to get into because, my gosh, when it comes to communication, when something goes wrong, it is just a royal pain, and it's a royal pain that can't get kicked down the road. You gotta address it right now. And both of us, if I remember correctly, have worked for organizations that have struggled maintaining emails and blacklists and all of those things, and so both of us noped out of that. Is that still your position?
Yeah, I did my own email hosting for quite a while on Zimbra, and it was fine for myself. But anytime that I tried to host for my wife, that was where there's a problem, right? She is an extremely tolerant person, but she's also one of those people that errors go to die there silently. So they either get forgotten or whatever, and I find out 3 months later that something isn't working. And that bothers me. And so on top of the fact that she'll express frustration of thing not working, it's just not, email is just not the thing, right? I don't want to be dealing with that.
Sure. So so all that being said, know what you're getting into if you're going to open this box, no pun intended. But we had a situation that came up recently at Altispeed in which the ISP that was previously providing SMTP access for people to scan documents on their copiers turned it off. And so all of a sudden, all these businesses were sending in tickets saying, hey, we can't scan this, that, or the other. And so we had talked about Mail in the Box. And the thing that we like about Mail in the Box is it's essentially a drop-in mail service for Nextcloud. In fact, so much so that I think there is a hidden potential, not a hidden potential, it's very much out there, and I've said this before. There is a huge potential for the Mail in the Box people to work with Nextcloud, or Nextcloud to work with Mail in the Box, or somehow put the pieces together, because Mail in the Box is the missing piece in Nextcloud. If you go into a business and say, I think you should use Nextcloud, and I've absolutely had this conversation more than once at this point, and I didn't bring it up, so that tells us where the need is. If you walk into a business and tell them, hey, I don't think the only options are Google and Microsoft, and they say, that sounds great, because we had Office 365, and we couldn't send emails to this domain, and we opened a ticket, and Microsoft wouldn't help. Or Microsoft shut off SMTP access and did it in sort of a rude way. They shut it off and sent us a letter and said, don't bother opening a support ticket if your stuff stops working. We're not backing down. We're not changing this. That doesn't feel like great customer service. If you've ever been on the other end of that conversation, the answer oftentimes is, have you thought about Nextcloud? And Nextcloud, for the vast majority of things, file sharing, photo sharing, file syncing, all of the things that you expect an Office in a Box to be able to do, Nextcloud knocks it out of the water. And it's self-hostable. And it's all the things we like. Open source, self-hostable, all those things. White label, the whole 9 yards. The one piece of functionality that Nextcloud doesn't have, and the one piece of functionality that is absolutely requisite of every business on planet Earth, is email. Now, it is a fantastic email front end. It has no email back end, so you have to sign up for a service to do a thing. In my humble opinion, Mail in the Box is the answer to that. So I went to our very capable technicians and said, hey, ISP, Office, all these places are making these changes. We need to have an answer for these people. What do we think about giving Mail in a Box a run? Now, here's the thing you will like about Mail in a Box. If you've never set up an email server, if you don't have any experience in this domain, if you're just starting from scratch, it is literally as simple as running a bash script. In fact, they give you the curl command right on their site and a little YouTube video to walk you through everything from going to DigitalOcean, setting out yourself up a droplet, going in, pasting, SSHing in, pasting the curl command, which downloads the bash script and runs it and sets Mail in a Box up. And then you have Mail in the Box. And here's the thing. If you're willing to let Mail in the Box do DNS, it'll do all the records and all the fancy stuff for you. So you don't have to set any of that stuff up. You don't have to configure anything by hand. It does it all for you. And so we've been running now for a few weeks, and it's been running really, really well. I'm trying to see if I have mail in. Yeah, here we go. So I get a usage report that gets emailed out once a week. And basically what it says is, here's how many log entries. Here are the accounts that are here. Here's how many that were sent. Here's from how many hosts. And here's the date. It basically breaks it down. It says, hey, in the last, in my case, it has 23 days. And then it says, so 40 days. And then it says in each hour, here is the emails that were sent. And so as an administrator, I really like it because I get a kind of big picture, 30,000 foot overview of here's how people are using the service. I like it because it gives me the opportunity to white label or brand a thing. I like it because I think it is the perfect companion to Nextcloud. If you're using Nextcloud and want to just add email on, or your business that wants to do that, this is a way to do that. So hopefully, JJ, that gives you some ideas. Everything from if you want to support an open source company and take encryption and security to an extreme, if you're looking for a middle of the road and you're wanting something that's cheap and available, or if you want to host it yourself, hopefully we've given you some options across the board and something to consider. A couple of you may remember that a few weeks back, we had a piece of feedback that came into the show, which, by the way, you can write in live@asknoahshow.com. We're very flexible with how we take your feedback. Come in by email. You can give us a call at 855-450-NOAH during the show, 6 to 7 Central Time on Tuesday nights, or you can drop it in the Geek Lab and just tag Marlon. A gentleman wrote in and he said, hey, I have this audio cassette and I'm trying to get audio off of it. What do I do? And our recommendation in the show, if my memory serves correctly, is I had referenced a project I had worked out with the University of North Dakota probably 10 years ago now, in which we were archiving a native language from a tribe where there were very few recordings. And now my part in that was less about the audio and was actually more about capturing the image of the tape so that they could be tagged appropriately, all the things. So this gentleman reached out and said, hey, I've tried everything. I've tried reaching out to universities and other places and nobody was able to help. And so he reached out to Altispeed Technologies and said, can my boys at Altispeed help out? And so we, of course, said, yes, we would be delighted to. Now, I'm going to tread on your attention span a little bit. I'll try and keep it as concise as I can. But effectively, there's a number of different things that you have to consider when you're going into analog audio. And specifically, at the time, reel-to-reel was the way to go. It had the highest dynamic range, it had the highest clarity, and all those things. The problem was it wasn't practical. Nobody was going to take these big things and obnoxious things, set them up in their homes and feed tape through and get it connected from one reel to the next. And nobody was going to do that. And so the cassette took off, right? And it followed records as the ability 8 tracks and eventually turned into the audio cassette, which is where our story picks up insofar as this guy has his audio cassette of recordings that he wants and he doesn't have access to it. Now, it kind of surprised me that universities no longer have the technology and the tools to be able to do this because, again, this is something that is widespread. There was a lot of audio that was preserved on audio cassettes, so hopefully we still have the ability to do that. And the lesson that I want you to take out of this, if nothing else, when you are doing something, be it a photo, a document, an audio recording, anything, pay attention to the format that you're storing it in. Pay attention to the medium you are storing it on. I have enough, I'm using my air finger quotes here, archive grade DVDs that are now coasters to tell you that didn't work out so well. It didn't last 100 years. Let's just say that. Okay. Which doesn't do a lot to inspire confidence in the 100-year guarantee for archive grade Blu-rays. Set that over here for just a second. Let's come back to formats. So when you're looking at preserving anything, it doesn't matter what it is, pay attention to if you're going to be able to open that file in 10 years. So things I ask myself, does it require a particular piece of software? If yes, is that software reproducible? Can I get it to run on a VM? Can I get it to run on a thing? There are some software, I've got we have essentially two-way radios that we use at the shop. And the way that you program them is with some very special software from Motorola. And so it only runs on a very specific version of Windows. And so I just have a laptop from that era with that software on it, and I can reproduce that environment. I have the steps to do it. There's no activation. There's none of that. So you should pay attention to, what do I need to be able to get in to do this thing? If you're looking at audio, if you're looking at images, if you're looking at text, is it in some sort of format that I'll be able to open 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now? If that format answer is WAV or FLAC or MP3 or something, the answer to that is probably yes. But the second thing that comes out of this is we have standardized on MP3. And that's unfortunate because the maximum bit rate of MP3 is about 320 kilobits. Uncompressed audio, true uncompressed audio, if you take like a CD, it's like 20,000 kilobits. So you're talking a fraction of the quality that we've reduced it down to. And the problem becomes, if you ever want to go back to the source material, you can't do that. So a little bit behind the scenes of what we did, because it's kind of cool. In 1972, there was a company called Nakamachi, and they introduced a cassette deck that outperformed most domestic semi-professional reel-to-reel recorders. So it actually was capable of producing on a level that reel-to-reel was. And they did a bunch of different things to make it do that. But the biggest thing was this dual head approach. It originally, when they released in 1981 their flagship, the 1000 ZXL, it sold for $3,800, and I think they had like a gold version, which was over $6,000. And to this day, it was the most expensive cassette deck in history. I do not have access to one of those. I do have access to a Nakamichi MR2, which is a 2-head mechanical 3-digit recorder playback unit. And essentially what it does is it provides 20 decibels of noise reduction above 1,000 hertz, which means you can double the amount given by what's known as a B tape. And so they have a 19 kilohertz multiplex pilot signal that's present in a lot of FM stereo broadcasts that can cause false triggerings of noise reduction systems. We weren't taking FM recordings. It was obviously recorded on some sort of a tape deck, so that wasn't necessary, but the noise reduction really played a part here. And so I would describe the MR2 is it's not the best unit, but it's definitely in their professional range, and I would put it against like 95% of tape decks out there. And really comes back to that dual head, one head for recording and one head for playback, so you can listen as you're going along. And so the end of the story was we were able to pull some audio off of those cassettes. We were able to use open source filtering to reduce the noise on those recordings, and we were able to get a deliverable to them. And I heard back today that they were able to listen to it and they were happy with the end result. And so the pulling back the curtain and letting the story complete itself that started on the air here is, when you're capturing stuff, when you're using stuff, pay attention to what it's going to look like for the guy 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, 50 years down the road. Focus on trying to make it shareable. Focus on trying to make it explorable. Focus on trying to make it reproducible, because all of those things will come back to help you in the end. And then do it in the highest possible quality. We're back next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central. AskNoahShow.com.